Hi, everyone, I'm Dan Abrams, and this is Court Camp.
Ready to take your play?
Yeah! I'll kill all you. I hope you die in person as well.
On behalf of me and my family, hope you burn in hell.
We're in Greenville, South Carolina for the arraignment of Jarquez Cooper. The 22-year-old was charged with 2 counts of murder, 7 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count possession of a firearm following a deadly shootout inside a nightclub that police believe was gang-related. Surveillance video from that night, released during a police press conference, shows Cooper and others entering the club through a back door where no security was present. Later, when a fight breaks out near the stage, Cooper can be seen pulling out a handgun and, moments later, firing multiple shots. As the club descends into chaos, 5 other patrons are caught on camera producing guns, but it's believed only one person other than Cooper actually fires a shot. Amid the panic, police arrive and work to clear the building.
Hey, we gotta get inside. Clear that.
In the aftermath, 8 people were left wounded. 23-year-old Michaela Bell and 51-year-old security guard Clarence Johnson were killed. Images taken from the security cameras were made public and used to help track Cooper to Atlanta, Georgia, where he was arrested. 3 other suspects wanted in connection with the shooting remained at large. Now, just days after the incident, with emotions still running high, members of the victims' families are allowed to speak before the judge rules on Cooper's bond.
On behalf of me and my family, hope you burn in hell. I hope you burn in hell. And everybody like she took my daughter, man. I hope you burn in hell, man. I just want to know why. Why? Why throw your life away? Why hurt everybody? Why leave me with 2 kids? First, I see justice. Second, I see war. I stand firm.
The judge stands firm too, denying bond on all charges. Cooper chooses not to speak, but as he signs his paperwork, crying in the gallery is interrupted by the father of Michaela Bell's children.
See, they didn't deserve this. Bell didn't deserve this. We don't deserve this.
Jarquez Cooper is being held without bond. He awaits trial. For our next story, we headed to the archives to Wood County, Ohio, for the sentencing of Sarah Bunch. It's 2009. The 21-year-old pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and arson in the death of her 60-year-old neighbor, Robert Porter. According to Bunch, Porter invited her to his home to take semi-nude photos for money, and then became aggressive and tried to sexually assault her. Bunch claimed he shot Porter twice in self-defense and left. 30 minutes later, she returned and set fire to his house. Prosecutors did not believe her story, and to avoid a potential life sentence if found guilty at trial, she accepted a plea deal. Before Judge Alan Mayberry issues his sentence, the victim's daughter, Tina Porter, offers a few words about her father, who also had 8 grandchildren.
The most vivid memory his grandchildren have of him is him laying dead in a casket over a senseless and, to them, confusing act of violence.
Next, it's Bunch's turn to speak, in hopes of getting a minimal sentence.
I really was a good person. I had 2 jobs. You know, I focused on my kid. I was doing what I needed to do.
If the judge is moved by Bunch's tears, he doesn't show it. Perhaps because of one specific question about the crime he just can't figure out.
I'm having a hard time
understand how someone's coming towards you and the second shot is in the back of their head. Can you explain that to me?
Bunch doesn't have an answer other than that Porter turned his head. And with that, the judge announces his sentence. 10 years for voluntary manslaughter, 18 months for arson, and 18 more months for tampering with evidence, for a total of 13 years in prison. It is clearly not the sentence Bunch was hoping for.
13 years?
An emotional Bunch is removed from the courtroom to begin her 13-year sentence. Her first chance for parole was in the fall of 2021, and it was denied. Inmate Robert Bridges, who's been in custody for 5 months, is sitting inside the Hillsborough Circuit Court for a hearing in a criminal case where he faces burglary and grand theft charges. Sergeant Tracy Wallace, an 18-year veteran, along with 2 Hillsborough County deputies, are in the courtroom in full uniform, providing courtroom security. Bridges, secured with leg shackles as well as handcuffed in front with an attached waist chain, is sitting at the end of the inmate bench, very close to Sergeant Wallace. Bridges pays close attention to Wallace as she walks out. As she turns, he remains focused on the sergeant. And once she gets close enough, Bridges jumps to his feet and makes his move, trying to grab the deputy's holstered sidearm. Bridges stands up and grabs for the deputy's gun with both hands. But Wallace turns to her right and blocks Bridges' grasp. The 2 other uniformed deputies immediately spring into action, pushing Bridges back into his seat, before picking him up and carrying him out of the courtroom. As for the original charges, he pled no contest and served just over 3 years in prison. As a result of the incident, Bridges was charged with battery on a law enforcement officer and depriving an officer of means of protection.
Have you seen it, folks?
Next, we go to the Pike County Courthouse in Waverly, Ohio, the sentencing of Charlie Reeder. The former Pike County Sheriff pleaded guilty to 2 counts of theft in office and tampering with evidence. The veteran lawman allegedly stole roughly $5,000, which had been confiscated in other cases. According to police, he used the money to support a gambling problem. Reeder was originally looking at 18 different charges, but to get that number knocked down to 5, he changed his plea to guilty. He appears before Judge Patricia Cosgrove.
So this time we'll proceed with sentencing.
For his crimes, Reeder's looking at a maximum sentence of 8 years in prison. The emotional defendant pleads with the judge for the minimum sentence: community service.
I stand here before you today to take accountability for my actions. As the Sheriff of Ohio, I shed, I shed bad light on it. Sorry. If I could go back and change it, I would a million times.
There's another box of Kleenex in here.
For this is not who I am. I have and I now pray that the court will find mercy on me. And I beg the court, if they see fit, to grant me community control. I am a good person. Make bad decisions and choices.
After expressing remorse for his crimes, Reeder begs the judge to consider the impact a prison sentence would have on his family.
I'm asking all this so that I have the opportunity to watch my son graduate from high school. My daughter, who's getting married in October, so that I can be there for her. And my wife, so that I can be a husband that I haven't been in 25 years due to my career. Your Honor, please do not send me to prison.
I have roamed, but I'm not ruined. I still have a lot of good left in me. And thank you for your time.
When he's finished, the judge has one thing to ask the defendant.
The big question I have, and is on everyone's mind, I'm assuming, is, I guess, why did you take the money?
I took the money. Mind you, this does not excuse it, but from drug dealers that took it from parents of very poor people in this county.
According to Reader, he spent much of that money to support charities in the community. But there's also evidence he built up a sizable gambling debt. And the judge is not feeling sympathetic.
You've been in law enforcement for 24 years. We all choose our profession, and we have to conduct ourselves with integrity so that everyone trusts us. It cannot be underestimated the damage that you have caused to the citizens of Pike County, to law enforcement who every day get up, face the same sort of stresses that you do. They go all home at night, they get up in the morning. The sacrifices that these men and women make, I think you made a mockery.
Reader is sentenced to a total of 6.5 years. But because some of those counts will run concurrently, meaning at the same time from holding public office in Ohio, and can no longer serve as a peace officer.
I remember waiting for a knife to go in me or a bullet to hit me.
Next, we're in Waco, Texas, for the trial of 35-year-old Jake Carazal, president of the Dallas chapter of the Banditos Outlaw Motorcycle Gang. Carazal is charged with a host of crimes, including directing the activities of a criminal street gang. He's the first of more than 150 defendants set to go to trial for their alleged involvement in a deadly biker shootout. 2 years earlier, outside a suburban Waco shopping mall, nearly 200 bikers assembled at the Twin Peaks Sports Bar for a scheduled meeting. But after a scuffle broke out in the parking lot between rival clubs, the Banditos and the Cossacks, the scene erupted into chaos. First with fists flying, then bullets. In the aftermath, more than 300 weapons would be recovered from the scene. And the biker brawl turned shootout would ultimately leave 9 bikers dead and 20 others wounded. More than 170 people were arrested in the deadliest biker shootout in U.S. history. At trial, the prosecution argued Jake Carazal and his Banditos were to blame for instigating the violence. But on the stand, Carazal claims it was actually their rivals, the Cossacks, who ambushed him soon after he parked his bike.
I remember they ripped my shield off my helmet. And I remember they had brass knuckles in there trying to get inside my face shield. They were trying to hit inside there. And I was just kicking and punching, and I remember waiting for a knife to go in me or a bullet to hit me. I was waiting on that. I knew I was fighting, and I knew it was coming.
The state continued to argue Carazal and the Banditos were upset over a territorial issue. But Carazal's lawyer, Casey Gautreaux, argued that prosecutors withheld evidence that would have undermined the entire theory and asked mid-trial that the charges be dismissed.
Twin Peaks, Your Honor, that contains information that is exculpatory and that seriously undermines the state's theory of prosecution. Excuse me. May I finish? Your Honor, how many times has the state sponsored testimony that the conflict at Twin Peaks was about a Texas bottom rocker? 3 separate times. And he's saying that there was no conflict over the Texas rocker. What effect does that have on the state's theory all the way up until now? is wholly inconsistent with the state's theory of prosecution.
What relief are you asking for?
I would like the court to dismiss the charges for prosecutorial misconduct, for willfully hiding and sitting on information that completely guts their case, Judge.
But after the judge rejected the motion,
Then the defense's motion to dismiss is denied at this time.
Gautreaux told prosecutors exactly what she thought of them.
It's criminal. It's criminal and it's unethical.
Jake Carazal's case would ultimately end in a mistrial after jurors were unable to reach a unanimous verdict. But before a second trial could begin, the case took a stunning turn. A newly elected district attorney dismissed all charges, including murder against Carazal, as well as the charges against 24 of the original 154 bikers named in the indictment. Next, we're in Columbus, Ohio, the trial of Wendell Hollingsworth. The 43-year-old is facing 13 charges, including aggravated robbery, felonious assault, and kidnapping. All the charges stem from an alleged 5-day crime spree that included carjacking, multiple armed robberies. Hollingsworth's rampage ultimately ended inside a Catholic church after he was subdued by a group of parishioners as he tried to rob their Sunday Mass at gunpoint. Now, on the first day of trial without the jury present, Hollingsworth, who's been deemed a security risk after spitting on his attorney and other previous outbursts, is wheeled in, appearing calm and collected. At least for a moment. As Hollingsworth is rolled into the courtroom, he appears to look at his court-appointed lawyer, Scott Weissman, before shifting his weight and kicking the attorney in the legs. As deputies rush in to help, Weissman can be seen holding onto his client's foot before taking another kick. In the background, a deputy deploys his taser. But amid the struggle, it appears his fellow deputy is caught in the leg by the tethered electrodes. After a brief recess, Hollingsworth is brought back into the courtroom, this time fully restrained and wearing a spit mask. But as his attorney tries to move forward with the hearing,
The maximum sentence that he could receive is 104 years.
he continues to disrupt.
Okay, give it to me now. It's unfair. Give it to me. Give me 250 years right now. It's unfair.
Continuing his rant, Hollingsworth demands that both the judge and his attorney be removed from the case based on what he claims is religious prejudice.
Thank you once again for telling me how to do my job. Here's the deal.
I'm gonna treat you fair. I'm gonna treat you fair. And you a Catholic. I'm charged with robbing the Catholic church. I'm gonna get a fair trial. It's the fault.
Wendell Hollingsworth would choose to remain in a holding cell during the rest of his trial. He was ultimately found guilty on all 13 counts and was given the maximum sentence of 93 years in prison. That's it for this edition of Court Cam. I'm Dan Abrams. Thanks for watching.